You must now face the real-world consequences of your irresponsible decisions." There was no anger in my voice, only a cold, unshakable certainty. I had learned that you cannot save people who don't want to save themselves, especially when their perceived struggles are a direct result of their own entitlement. I then filed for an uncontested divorce, ensuring I would retain all my assets and that Frank would receive nothing, and a restraining order to put a legal barrier between us. Frank, overwhelmed, suffered a stress-induced hospital stay. The grand architect of his new life was now a broken man, facing a future he had never envisioned. A few weeks later, Frank, now represented by a desperate second-tier lawyer, attempted a countermove in court. He filed a counter-petition for divorce, bringing forth an old document, the Williams Family Trust, established in 1998, which listed him as a co-trustee and, he hoped, entitled him to 40% of my business assets, including Williams Construction. For a fleeting moment, a ripple of unease went through the courtroom. Had I missed something? Was there a flaw in my meticulously planned strategy? Margaret Chen, however, remained impassive beside me. She merely exchanged a knowing glance with me, a silent reassurance that we had anticipated this. Judge Harrison, stern and fair, listened patiently as Frank's lawyer presented his flimsy case. Then, it was Margaret's turn. She rose, her presence commanding, her voice ringing with authority. "Your Honor," she began, "while Mr. Williams' counsel attempts to leverage this trust, there are a few pertinent details they seem to have overlooked." She paused, letting the silence build. "My client, Patricia Williams, has a net worth that far eclipses the modest value of this trust. Mr. Williams' perceived 40% interest in Williams Construction would be a mere pittance compared to her actual, undisclosed fortune." She then dropped the bombshell. "Patricia Williams' true net worth, Your Honor, is a staggering $47 million. A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Frank's jaw dropped, his face paling even further. The judge raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. Margaret continued, her voice gaining momentum. "Furthermore, Your Honor, we have irrefutable evidence that Frank Williams, over the course of his affair, embezzled $127,000 of marital funds to finance his illicit activities. She presented a thick binder filled with bank statements, credit card receipts, and wire transfers, all meticulously documented. He not only betrayed his marriage vows, but also engaged in financial misconduct, which, as Your Honor knows, carries severe legal consequences." The judge looked directly at Frank, his gaze piercing. "Mr. Williams, you are faced with a choice. You can agree to an uncontested divorce, accept a settlement of $50,000, and, crucially, repay the $127,000 you embezzled. Or my office will be forwarding this evidence to the district attorney for criminal charges of embezzlement. The choice is yours." Frank, defeated, broken, and utterly humiliated, slumped in his chair. He looked at me, a silent plea in his eyes, but I offered nothing. It was too late for pity, too late for forgiveness. He nodded, a barely perceptible movement. "I accept," he mumbled, his voice hoarse. My plan was complete. Justice, not just revenge, had been served. Months passed. Frank's world remained shattered. He was broke, homeless, and dealing with the weight of massive debts and a ruined reputation. Jay continued to struggle, facing the harsh realities of his failed business without my financial safety net. But my world, my reclaimed world, was vibrant and full of possibility. I sold the newly listed lot and bought myself a beautiful beachfront house, the ocean breeze a constant reminder of my freedom. I spent my days reading, traveling, investing in ventures I genuinely cared about, and finally, truly living. The quiet peace I had always craved was finally mine, unburdened by deceit or ingratitude. Then, one afternoon, my phone rang. It was Sophie. I almost didn't answer, but something compelled me. Her voice was hesitant, almost shy. "Mom, it's Sophie. I just wanted to say that I've been doing some thinking, and I got a real job. At a marketing firm. It's not glamorous, but I'm learning, and I'm paying my own bills." She paused, then continued, her voice softer. I know I was wrong. We all were. I miss you, Mom. And I was wondering, maybe, if you're ever free, would you want to go Dutch on coffee sometime? No expectations, just coffee? I felt a flicker of the old Patricia, the vulnerable part that might still want to save people who didn't want to save themselves. But it was quickly tempered by the new, stronger me. This wasn't a demand or an expectation of a handout. This was Sophie, tentatively reaching out, offering respect and equality. It was a small, fragile olive branch, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt a glimmer of hope for a genuine connection. I smiled, a real smile, for myself. I think, I said, my voice gentle but firm, I'd like that very much, Sophie. My life was mine, completely and irrevocably, and that, after everything, was the greatest triumph of all. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching. He sent me a text demanding I be gone by the time he returned from his wedding, claiming he hated old things and deserved a new life, but what he didn't know was that for 3 years, I had been meticulously planning how to dismantle his. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. My name is Patricia Williams, and for 28 years, I poured every ounce of my being into building what I thought was our life. Our suburban paradise, an $800,000 home nestled in a quiet cul-de-sac, was more than just bricks and mortar. It was the embodiment of my dreams, a place I had inherited from my grandmother and painstakingly transformed into a haven for my family. I was the quiet force behind everything. While Frank, my husband, took all the credit, I was the one meticulously managing the finances, running the household, and, crucially, laying the groundwork for what he proudly called Williams Construction. Everyone thought it was his company, his brainchild, but the truth was, it was mine. Born from my inheritance, my vision, and my tireless work ethic, with Frank merely the face, the one who glad-handed clients while I handled every single detail, from bidding to payroll. I always just wanted peace, a loving home, and to see my children, Jake and Sophie, thrive. I sacrificed my own ambitions countless times, always putting their needs first. I believed in the sanctity of family, in commitment, in the quiet strength of enduring love. But Frank saw things differently. He saw me as a faded photograph, an outdated relic, a means to an end. Over the past year, he'd grown increasingly distant. His phone always clutched tight, his excuses for late nights becoming more elaborate and less convincing. I tried to ignore the gnawing fear, to tell myself it was just stress, that he was simply working hard for our future. Until one morning, while doing laundry, I found a lacy, unfamiliar thong tangled in his clothes. It was small, delicate, certainly not mine. That's when it hit me, not a suspicion, but a cold, hard certainty. He wasn't just distant, he was betraying everything we had built. I remember standing there, the flimsy scrap of fabric clutched in my hand, the vibrant colors of what I thought was my life draining away into a monochrome reality. The pain was instant, sharp, like a physical blow, but beneath it, something else began to stir, a quiet, dangerous resolve. I wasn't just going to let this happen. I would wait, I would plan, and I would make him regret every single cruel slight. That thong, innocent as it seemed, was the catalyst. My 3-year plan of retribution began that very day, fueled by a broken heart and a newly awakened, fierce intelligence. The final betrayal came with an almost theatrical flourish. Frank, emboldened by his affair with Amber, his 24-year-old dental hygienist, announced he was leaving me. Not with regret, not with apology, but with a smug smile, as if he were bestowing a gift upon me. Our adult children, Jake and Sophie, despite being in their late 20s and utterly dependent on our money, Jake with his failed cryptocurrency startup that Frank had foolishly co-signed a massive loan for, and Sophie, with her vacuous social media influencing career, seemed to rally around him. They sided with Frank, captivated by the shiny newness of Amber, the promise of a modern life, seemingly blind to the wreckage he was leaving behind. They even celebrated his new beginning, oblivious to the fact that their own financial stability was inextricably tied to mine. Frank declared he was jetting off to Tuscany for a destination wedding with Amber, a lavish affair that I knew for a fact was being funded by our joint accounts, or so he thought. Just before they boarded their flight, a cruel, dismissive text message flashed across my phone screen. "Be gone when we return. I hate old things. I work hard, so I deserve a new life." The words were a knife twist, a final, public humiliation. I read it, and for a moment, the world tilted. But then, an icy calm settled over me. The pain was still there, a dull ache, but it was overshadowed by a chilling clarity. The Patricia who cried herself to sleep was gone. The strategist, the protector of her own dignity, had fully emerged. I had been prepared for this moment for 3 long years. Every tear I didn't shed, every quiet evening I spent poring over documents instead of weeping, was a brick laid in the foundation of my strategy. My transformation from a hurt wife to a calculated strategist was complete the day I found that thong. I realized that Frank didn't just want a new wife. He wanted a new life, one built entirely on my hard work and the assets I had brought into the marriage. He wanted to discard me, along with all the inconvenient truths of his own financial irresponsibility. That wasn't just betrayal, it was an attempt at erasure. And I refused to be erased. My first move 3 years ago had been to consult Margaret Chen, an old friend from my college days who had become a formidable divorce attorney with 40 years of experience. She was sharp, shrewd, and exactly the kind of ally I needed. I explained everything to her, from my inheritance of the house to the quiet way I'd built Williams Construction from the ground up, keeping Frank as the front man because he loved the spotlight. Margaret, with her keen eye, immediately saw the potential. The house, she confirmed, was initially solely in my name, a gift from my grandmother. Frank's name had been added years ago, a revocable gift deed I'd given him out of love and trust. But as Margaret explained, depending on the terms, adultery could serve as grounds for revocation. We began the quiet, meticulous work of legally revoking that gift, ensuring that if Frank strayed, his claim to the house would vanish. It was a lengthy, complex process, all documented, all filed away, waiting for the right moment. Next, we tackled Williams Construction. For years, I had held the majority of the shares, quietly restructuring the company's legal framework so that Frank, while he believed himself the owner, was technically a high-level employee with a generous salary. This was a painstaking process, executed over several years, involving discreet meetings with corporate lawyers and accountants, all sworn to secrecy. I opened new hidden bank accounts, diverting a portion of my personal income and quiet returns from my separate, highly successful investments. Investments Frank knew nothing about. Investments that now accounted for a staggering $47 million net worth. These funds were entirely separate from our marital assets, meticulously segregated and managed by a financial advisor Frank had no knowledge of. I documented every single financial transaction Frank made, noting his exorbitant spending on Amber, the designer clothes, the luxury vacations, the expensive jewelry. A separate spreadsheet, codenamed Amber's Tab, tracked nearly $43,000 in credit card debt he'd amassed, all for his new, younger love, all hidden from me. I also kept a close eye on Jake's disastrous cryptocurrency venture. When he needed a huge loan, Frank, ever the doting but irresponsible father, co-signed it without a second thought, basking in Jake's fleeting adoration. I allowed it, even encouraged it, knowing it would likely fail, creating a financial anchor around Frank's neck. I kept all the co-signing documents, notarized and secure. And, of course, the most crucial piece of my plan, our marriage. Margaret ensured that, despite Frank's brazen affair and his impending, quote, wedding, our marriage remained legally valid. His ceremony in Tuscany, no matter how extravagant, would be nothing more than a commitment ceremony, utterly without legal standing in the eyes of the law. Amber would become Frank's fiancée, but never his wife. My lawyers and I worked in the shadows, creating legal structures, preparing lawsuits, and compiling an irrefutable mountain of evidence against Frank. Every single piece of paper, every email, every surveillance note was meticulously filed in secure digital and physical locations, ready for deployment. My kindness was gone, replaced by an iron will. I wasn't a victim. I was a general, and Frank was about to walk into my trap. While I meticulously prepared my counterplan, Frank, Amber, Jake, and Sophie reveled in their Tuscan fantasy. They sent me smug photos of sun-drenched vineyards and lavish dinners, Frank's arm wrapped possessively around Amber, Jake and Sophie smiling beside them, utterly oblivious to the storm brewing. Frank even called me once, his voice dripping with condescension, asking if I'd managed to pack all my old things yet. He told me he'd be sending a moving truck for my belongings, as if my entire life could be boxed up and shipped off like unwanted furniture. Each call, each photo, each dismissive comment only hardened my resolve. They were building their fantasy on the ruins of my heart, completely unaware that I was about to pull the rug out from under their feet. Not just figuratively, but literally. The day of their return arrived. I sat in my discreet Honda Civic, parked down the street from what used to be our home, watching. Their rental car pulled up, Frank beaming, Amber clutching a bouquet of Tuscan wildflowers, Jake and Sophie trailing behind, probably exhausted but still radiating smug satisfaction. They stepped out, laughing, talking over each other until they turned towards the house. Their smiles faltered, their jaws dropped. The lot was empty. Where our beautiful $800,000 home once stood, there was only a barren patch of earth, a freshly poured foundation, and a prominent for sale sign staked firmly in the ground. Frank's face went from joyous to ashen. Amber's bouquet dropped to the asphalt. Jake spluttered, "What? What happened?" Sophie let out a horrified shriek. That was my cue. I stepped out of my car, my expression calm, almost serene, a stark contrast to their growing panic. "Hello, Frank," I said, my voice steady, devoid of emotion. "Welcome home. Or rather, welcome to what used to be home." Frank finally found his voice, a strangled sound. "Patricia, what in God's name have you done?" "I've simply reclaimed what was always mine," I replied, walking slowly towards them. "You see, Frank, this house, the land it sat on, was my inheritance. My grandmother left it to me. The gift deed I gave you years ago, adding your name to the title, it had a specific clause, revocable in the event of adultery, and given your Tuscan escapade, it was easily executed." Their eyes widened. "The demolition began a week ago. The lot is now listed for sale. The proceeds are, of course, mine." Amber, finding her voice, screeched, "But this was our home, our future. We just got married." I turned to her, a small, sad smile touching my lips. "Oh, Amber, that's the other thing. You see, Frank and I are still legally married." "So your wedding in Tuscany?" It was nothing more than a very expensive, very beautiful commitment ceremony, completely invalid in the eyes of the law. Amber gasped, looking from me to Frank, her face a mask of dawning horror. Frank looked utterly gutted, like a puppet whose strings had been cut. "And speaking of things that were ours," I continued, my gaze sweeping over Jake and Sophie, who now looked more bewildered than angry. "Frank, you used to take such pride in Williams Construction, didn't you? Well, I have some news for you. That company, my dear, has always been legally mine. You were merely an employee, a well-paid one, I might add. And as of this morning, your services are no longer required. You're fired, Frank. Effective immediately." His mouth hung open. "Fired? My company?" "My company," I corrected softly. "And your credit cards, Frank? The ones you used to shower Amber with gifts? Those lavish trips, the designer clothes, the $43,000 you racked up? I've been monitoring them. I've paid them off, but the debt is now entirely yours, due immediately. And don't forget the massive loan you co-signed for Jake's failed crypto startup. I've stopped all payments on that as well. Both you and Jake will soon be facing imminent bankruptcy. Jake groaned, leaning against the empty lot sign, looking physically ill. Sophie stared at me, her perfect social media smile completely gone, replaced by a look of utter despondency. Amber, enraged, turned on Frank, yelling about how he'd lied to her, how he'd left her jobless and apartmentless. The scene was chaotic, a cacophony of shattered dreams, and I stood in the center of it, an immovable object, watching their world crumble around them. The years of quiet planning had culminated in this precise moment of devastating revelation. It wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about undeniable truth, delivered with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. Frank was truly penniless, homeless, and facing financial ruin on multiple fronts. Amber, feeling utterly betrayed and with no place to go, publicly shamed Frank on social media, detailing his lies and the extent of his financial deception, making sure the world knew he wasn't the successful man he pretended to be. She disappeared shortly after, leaving Frank completely alone. Jake, in a panic, called me almost daily, begging me to fix his crypto loan to save him from bankruptcy. Sophie, equally distressed about her own precarious future now that her father's illusion of wealth had vanished, demanded I intervene. "Mom, how could you do this to us? You have to fix this. This is your fault," she wailed over the phone. I listened to their pleas, their anger, their desperate demands, and a vulnerable part of me, the old Patricia, might have wanted to step in to save them. But the new Patricia, the strategist, knew better. "Jake, Sophie," I told them, my voice firm, "you are adults. You made your choices. You supported your father's new life. You encouraged his abandonment of me. And you blindly relied on a future that was never guaranteed.